Let me just double check that we're not live on YouTube because I don't think that would be good.
That'd be pretty funny. They'll know what they're going to get sooner than rather than later.
Oh, well, I've thought about it for a while, like whether we should do that. I put the call out a few episodes ago about whether people would actually want that. I didn't have anyone like say, oh my God, yeah, I've got to have that.
But if you do it, you have to. Malcolm Natai has to join the show.
Yeah, well.
You could actually create a paid platform for that, because I tell you what, I mean, I would pay to see Malk do his thing. I've probably got his number. Should we bring him on the line?
Well, we've also talked about that where it's like not pay to play, but like the conversations that we have off the microphone with some of our guests are probably the best conversations that we have. You know, like the one we had earlier in which we both revealed all our deepest, darkest secrets before I started recording.
That was beautiful too. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I would never have expected that from me or you. But yeah, anyway.
Congratulations on the boss winning on the weekend.
Very cool. Yeah, that was very cool.
Tell the people what he won.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. He won the...
Actually, I've got the script here. Do you want it?
Yeah,
I'll read it to you.
Read it up.
The Promoter's Choice Award. Yeah, this year goes to a team that has been part of the Speedway journey for almost 30 years. For 29 seasons, they've been an unwavering supporter of the sport, our promotions, and, of course, Bay Park Speedway. The commitment has helped make race meetings bigger, stronger, and more successful year after year, whether it's bringing cars across multiple classes, attracting world-class drivers, or simply turning up and supporting the show. This team has always led from the front. The professionalism they bring to the pits is second to none. They set a standard that has earned them respect throughout New Zealand Speedway. This award is also about the drivers who have come through their programs over the years, that they've watched many competitors develop their skills, build successful careers, and proudly represent one of the most recognised names in the sport. Tonight, we acknowledge the contribution this team has made, not only to Bay Park Speedway, but to Speedway right across New Zealand. And on a personal note, thank you for your loyalty, thank you for your support, thank you for your professionalism, and thank you for everything you have contributed to our sport over the past 29 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the recipients of the 25-26 Promoter's Choice, Jeff and Suzanne Harper and the entire HLR team. Amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, no, fantastic guy, fantastic Suzanne. Like I said, just opportunities in my life I would never have had without Jeff and Suzanne. So yeah, forever grateful to them. And it was cool to see them get some recognition from, the Speedway community, the place that we've kind of made our home over the last couple of seasons in Bay Park. So yeah, it was a special one. And it was an awesome
there
night.
Next to him, and they're sort of going, I think it's about you. Nah, it can't be about me. Steve's looking at you. No, it can't be about me.
It was funny watching him clock it too. Because you really did build the suspense, but looking across at him, you sort of like, oh yeah, that guy, gee, yeah.
Well, I've done that before.
Not too many of them, could only really be a couple of those, and then you sort of clocked it through the speech. So no, it was a real special one. So yeah, thank you to you and Bay Park for making that happen. And I had no prior knowledge of that even being a thing.
That's right. Congratulations for not having the prior.
You're listening to the Speedway Insider, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of Speedway in New Zealand, hosted by three-time New Zealand champion Christian Hermanson and Ruapuna's own Louise Smith. The Speedway Insider will give you a unique perspective by going behind the scenes of everything Speedway to find and tell the stories that you won't hear anywhere else, by talking to competitors, car owners, decision makers, and anyone who makes the sport tick. Thanks for listening. Here's the latest episode. Yeah, look, I know that no one likes their podcast to be interrupted by ads, but there are a few people who help us here at the Speedway Insider that we have to give a quick little shout out. First of those is a big shout out to our friends at Fastmaster, Alistair and all his team. Established in 1992, Fastmaster is one of New Zealand's leading distributors of everything that you need to operate at a high level when you're behind the wheel. The team at Fastmaster stock brands like Marina Racewear, RI Stand 21 Ogio, Inferno Armour, and of course their newly developed Ibex tyre treatment and Dirt Slayer tear-offs. I've been a customer of Alistair's and Fastmaster now for over 6 years, and I get everything that I need from Alistair. I run a custom marina suit, have an RI helmet, and get all my Dirt Slayer tear-offs from him during the season as well. Service that Fastmaster and Alistair provides goes above and beyond to make sure that you're all sorted for Saturday night. So check out their website, fastmaster.co.nz, or stop into their new location in Albany.
When Kiwis hand us their keys, they're choosing quality without compromise. At Auto Super Shops, we understand what these keys represent. From routine maintenance to complex repairs, we approach every job with the same commitment to quality. Value that lasts, dependable parts, service you can count on. That's why at Auto Super Shops, we never cut corners, delivering the best value from mechanics you can trust.
It's the place to stop, your Auto Super Shops.
We're New Zealand's mechanic.
I guess we go from clubs to governing bodies.
Yeah, God, what a segue. I forgot what it's like. It's just bang, hits you. But yeah, look, I mean, I guess first things first, we had a bit of a break since the last episode. I started a new job, so I've been absolutely flat tack at that and whatever else. So yeah, but we had to come back because, well, basically, yeah, the AGM's coming up in a couple of weeks. So it must be 36 days away now. So the 40-day pack came out on Friday. And a bit of a surprise, or for me anyway, not really being in the loop on this stuff anymore, but a bit of a surprise to see an SGM in the mix this year. So that's a special general meeting, as well as the annual general meeting, which by their names happen every year, annual, and only in special circumstances, as in a special general meeting. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise, and then the topics inside them were a bit of a surprise. So I've had a couple of days to digest and think about it and all of that sort of thing. And then I thought, hell, I mean, it'd be good if someone had some takeaways and God, explain to me what's actually going on in this pack of basically rule changes. And I wish someone would explain what's going on. So that's our job today, because I realized, hold on, I have the exact platform for that.
Well, you said, I think the other day I read something and it says, who wants to come on? And me being me, I was like, I'll come on, but I'll argue against everything that you have to say for the joy of entertainment. But you've got a couple of topics.
Yeah, well, I think as someone, because I also probably underestimate how much of a rarity it is for someone having been in the room at an AGM or an SGM. I've been to both, not just in Speedway, but also in a few other circumstances I found myself in. So yeah, I thought it would be interesting to kind of, in advance, give people a bit of a window into, yeah, how the day happens, or the 2 days actually in this case, and then that sort of rolls into the Saturday night into the awards. So it's normally a Friday and a Saturday. But yeah, it's kind of a big moment for the sport. It should be the moment that kind of, sets it's where the sport gets together as a whole. Everyone's there. So it's kind of the one time a year where you could say that basically the whole sport is under the same roof, where you've got the directors, you've got the president, you've got the management side of Speedway New Zealand, the people from the office are there. Even Speedway New Zealand's lawyer normally goes to those meetings. It's in Christchurch this year in a couple of weeks, as I said. So it's the second weekend of July. So yeah.
Probably the first time that Christchurch would have held it in quite some time.
Well, 3 years. It's not a
rotation.
rotation.
How much I've cared, I mean, I'm a washed up MC these days and commentator, so I'm like, I used to always be like, I was like vice president of many a Speedway club and on committees for many, many years, and I was like, yeah, just park that. It's easier to just get paid to talk into a microphone.
No, so it was in Christchurch 3 years ago. Then it were rotated to Palmerston North the year after, because Bruce Robertson made an impassioned plea to the floor in Christchurch that it had to be in New Zealand's Speedway capital. And yeah, I mean, he was right. It was a spectacular conference that year, and the awards was really something else. So yeah, and then it was in Auckland last year. So yeah, Christchurch this year. Not sure where it is going to be next year. That normally gets announced on the last day. But
I mean, based off your rotational system, I guess it's in Greymouth. We don't have to touch off there. How many things are we going to talk about tonight?
Okay, let's get into it. So basically, yeah, there's five remits at the SGM, and I guess we're going to follow roughly what I would if I was structuring the meeting. This is how I would structure it, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if I was structuring the meeting, I would go the SGM first, because there's obviously a special reason why you're going to have the SGM, and I'll explain that in a second. But yeah, so that kind of leads into remit number one. Basically, remit number one. Last year, there was a major constitutional overhaul. So it's real nuts and bolts stuff, this stuff. So really, really bear with me. But last year, basically the Incorporated Societies Act of 1908, as the name would suggest, hadn't had an update in about 100 and almost years. A couple of years ago, probably 5 years ago, the government made some changes, sort of modernized that act into how incorporated societies work. That affected everything from kind of the national level, the Speedway New Zealand board, right the way through. Every club in New Zealand had to redo their constitution and, make sure that they complied with that new piece of legislation. So that was, a good example of how stuff that changes at central government level affects the sport of Speedway as a whole. Kind of the way these things happen is they have to be passed at an AGM, and then even though they're drafted before, basically what it ended up happening and what remit number one fixes, due to, I'm guessing, an oversight. Effectively, the way the rulebook is worded right now is that every competitor or every license holder could go to the AGM in a month's time and basically have speaking and voting rights, which is contradictory to another section inside the Constitution. So it's pretty clear that the intent is that not every person has speaking or voting rights at the AGM, because that could lead to, kind of pretty long AGMs, is the point. But so, remit number one tidies up, I guess, a bit of an anomaly and a bit of an oversight from the major, every part of the Constitution was reviewed and replaced last year in Auckland. So, major piece of work which the board was working on for a very long time. But basically, remit number one fixes that little anomaly. But
am I for or against this?
Well,
are you for or against this?
I don't know. I guess me personally, look, I probably am for this, because actually what this does is it's not really about the intent of should someone be allowed to have speaking or voting rights at the AGM. Basically, this just tidies up something that was missed, which is contradicted in other parts of the rulebook. So it's a tidy. It's clear this is a tidy up. So
it doesn't remove the rights. It clarifies the rights that were already intended under the representative model.
Yeah, pretty much, because the way it does work in other parts of the Constitution is it talks about, a track having a promotion, a representative from the promotion and a representative from competitors. I guess the thought exercise it does kind of bring to mind, though, is, well, what if every competitor or license holder actually did have the opportunity to go to AGM? But what if there was maybe just speaking rights for, say, observers? Because observers, you're allowed to be an observer at the AGM. I'm not actually sure why you would, because you can't speak, you can't vote, you can't say anything. You've got to sit down in the back of the room very quietly. But it kind of does bring up the thought exercise for me anyway.
I guess, in that respect there, like major constitutional changes should potentially allow like a broader member input, which would allow that to happen. But in the same breath, constitutions should not contradict themselves. And that's what the problem currently is that there's that contradiction.
Yeah. Putting aside, remit number one, because it is a contradiction, so you should fix the contradiction. Yeah, that is right. I think everyone's kind of probably in favour of that. But I think for me, what if you did have an AGM or an SGM and it was particularly contentious? I can think of a few years ago in Christchurch when there was some remits around, taking some of the rule-making authority away from the board, or I don't know. I can think of countless contentious topics, I can think of tyre rules, I can think of debris rules, I can think of all sorts of things where what if the competitor base was actually charged up enough to pay the money, fly to conference potentially and get on the floor and have their say? What if that was the case? And I guess maybe I'm in favour of that, because I think sometimes just, I guess the way that things work in the AGM is all of the things are kind of voted on or passed on. They're normally drafted in advance, but if you get some things kind of happening fast on the floor, or because it happens fast, that's the other thing about the AGM, the day.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, wait. Yeah, that's the thing about the AGM is that things happen fast and things get missed. So, Yeah, I don't know. What's your takeaway? Because I guess I'm not kind of also advocating for the old ancient Greece model where, everything has to be spoken on or voted on by every single competitor, because I actually think that's the reason why we have a board and why we send these people to the conference, is to represent our views. And it's the same as Parliament, not everyone goes to Parliament.
That's what I was going to bring up. Like if you've got, what we're essentially doing is we're stopping the need for 5 point whatever million people to rock on up to Wellington and expect to have everything that they've got to say heard. So that's the point, is you take it to your politician takes it on behalf, they go to the cabinet meetings, it gets brought up. So in this case here, we've got the people that are members of the Speedway New Zealand, the drivers, etc. They go to their clubs have got a representative, that representative goes through, and it's their job to essentially champion everything that they've been told to champion from the meetings that they've had at home. So the most important thing we go back to is that it was a contradiction, and now they're looking to clear it up. So in this situation, I say,
yeah, play on. Me too. Same. Yeah. I just think, I think right now, I think maybe the Parliament example is a good example for two reasons. One is that, if there is a highly contentious issue, I can think of, in the last few years, the Three Waters legislation under the last government. I mean, that charged the whole country. I mean, everyone was talking about it, And I guess the avenue for that was, it all went through Parliament, but, people had the opportunity to present to select committees, and people had the opportunity to protest, and, there was platform media was full of, talk about it and all that sort of thing. I think that's just probably one thing that we kind of, don't really get in Speedway is that kind of real exchange of opinions on the floor of the AGM, like you do in Parliament, where, you do have people that have differing views, and that's often where the best rules and policies kind of made, is when you have had that basically an argument about it, because, I think this, and then you kind of meet in the middle. So it's,
I guess in that situation, the messiness of democracy, it isn't a flaw. It's just, and it's often where the best ideas come from. But we just don't have the time for 5.7 million people to have that, which is why we need to go down potentially that route that we're saying. You've got your delegates, they're going to talk on your behalf. When they come back and they've got it wrong, shoot them. Don't shoot them.
Don't actually shoot them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough job. You have to sit in a room for 2 days. And sometimes the rooms have windows, but other times they don't. It's a tough one. But yeah, I don't know. Just a thing to think about. This is what the Speedway Insider is all about, is the thought exercise of what if things were this way. I can think of another example where, so I used to be really involved in politics, as most people know, and spent a bit of time in the National Party and all that sort of thing, where you can, in theory, if you're a card-carrying member of the National Party, you can rock up to their conference. It'll be pretty locked down because it's election year, but in theory, you could rock up in a couple of months when they have it, probably here in Auckland, and you could take what's called a remit to the National Party, and say that you want the National Party to adopt anything. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but my favourite one's always square wheels. You could rock up to the National Party conference and say, I think the National Party should take to the election the policy that all vehicles in New Zealand should have square wheels. And the debate gets had. You get your time on the floor, so long as you've got the signatures from your local committee and that sort of thing. And you get to have the debate on the floor with the Prime Minister or, senior National Party members or cabinet ministers sitting around, and you get your 10 minutes to speak on whatever you want, basically. And I remember, and I think it was 2012, it's going back a long time, but the big debate of the day was around the purchasing age of alcohol. And I remember there was a group of us, you could have called us Young Nats, took a remit to the National Party conference around keeping that age 18, because, that's the age where you could vote. It's the age you can go to war. It's the age you can do lots of things when you're 18. But the policy of the day was to make it back to 21. We took 18 to the National Party conference, and guess what? We had our day. We had our 15 minutes. John Key at the time listened to us, and ultimately it went to the election, and we kept the age 18. So that's an example of a good sort of policy making thing where it came from the grassroots and then has gone all the way through into law. So, okay, you also do have to weed through the ones like square wheels and stuff that are just really bad ideas. But yeah, I think the thought process around is, and my thing with Speedway, and in particular the stuff that happens at that Speedway New Zealand level, is I was always working backwards from, well, how do we make this more transparent, and how do we make it so that everyone understands what we're doing and everyone understands, what's going on basically, and how to fix them. So for me, yeah, it's just all about transparency and working backwards from, basically. I mean, I used to think we should live stream the AGMs, and
Definitely.
every speech should be live streamed. I used to think, like local body politics, local government meetings, all of those council meetings and stuff, they're all live streamed. So why shouldn't the board meetings be live streamed? The Speedway New Zealand board meetings be live streamed? Like,
yeah, but it's got to be done like on either an Android or an Apple phone. Doesn't matter. None of this fanciness,
no,
It's got to be a
no.
tender process. I mean, we don't want, Video Hub fighting with Broadcast Co fighting with the pits, So it's just got to be a shitty cell phone from an Apple 14 or something.
Well, that's all they are in the council meeting. Is I'm pretty sure it's just a phone on a tripod and then live streamed to YouTube. And okay, only about 30 people maybe watch those. But the point is that you can do it, and it just makes it more transparent, and it's there, it's on the record.
All right,
all the debates get talked about. You can go back and watch them if it's your issue of the day. But look, like I say, I work backwards from everything should be absolutely crystal clear, and until it's not, I think you can always do better, basically. So it's though this remit's kind of fixing up an anomaly that was created with the constitutional overhaul last year. It just got me thinking about, hey, this actually might be a way of maybe increasing the transparency.
All right, so remit number 1, are we thumbs up or thumbs down? Do we support it?
No, we're in favour of remit number 1. I just think it's an opportunity. There could be an opportunity to maybe make it better. They might have accidentally stumbled on a really, really good idea. Accidentally.
All right, moving on to 2. What do we got next?
Okay, remit number 2. So remit number 2 is a brand new rule set that's being sort of put into the rule book. Basically, it sets out the standards for how a class, a category, a grade, whatever you call it, stays a national class or ultimately might get downgraded to become a regional class. And there's some stuff in there around how many tracks you've got to be registered to, registering your class. And there's also a number around how many competitors you have to have in the class each year. And then basically it sets out a 3-year sort of period where, your grade, your class could be downgraded to be a regional class. So I think this one's interesting as well. Maybe it fits into the category of remit number 1, because on one level, I'm actually in favour of this remit, because at the moment, there are actually rules about going up and down as a regional or national class. You saw production saloons do it a couple of years ago. But that's about the only example in history I can think of in my time in Speedway of
saloons,
one going backwards
down.
and forwards.
Yeah, well,
going backwards
obviously.
and forwards.
Oh, backwards and forwards.
Did they go down? Yeah, no.
Well, arguably they should.
But this is the thing, right? So there is currently a process, but the rules obviously aren't working, because you could probably point across the rule book into the different grades and probably point to about maybe 5 or 6 categories that should be regional classes based on the rules right now, right? So it's obvious the rules aren't working. So on one level, it sort of fixes an anomaly in that sense. But I guess the thing for me is just around the intention and whether we should be doing that or not. Whether we should have classes go backwards and forwards and up and down between regional and national classes and what that even means or what have you. I mean, basically, I think for most people, what it means is having a New Zealand title or not. But I guess, yeah, it just kind of, for me, goes back to that intention. And is that what we sort of want for our categories and our classes and the people that we have within our sport?
I guess for me, I mean, I look at it and I think, well, if a class doesn't meet its participation level, the national status almost becomes meaningless.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely make that argument. that is true. I just think that if your grade is going through sort of a tough period, but
you can't say the struggling class by taking away its biggest promotional asset, though.
Nah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, couldn't have said it any better myself. But yeah, I think that's sort of the centerpiece event that you're effectively gonna take away and whatever else. I mean, so maybe there's a few different sort of solutions to this, and maybe it's that 3 years. Maybe that's where I'm kind of mainly hung up on, because actually 3 years is a pretty short space of time, to be honest. I think as well, and in the context of things. So effectively, what you're saying is like within 4 years, your class could be sort of pulled back to a regional class if you don't sort of start meeting those numbers. So yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think particularly at the moment, I think when Speedway New Zealand release their numbers in a couple of weeks, you'll see what we all sort of felt around the tracks this year, which was that there probably was a slight regression in competitor numbers this year, and that's just the economy, and just that's sort of the reality of it. People race Speedway when they've got a bit of extra cash. So, I think if your class goes through a couple of rough years and then you don't suddenly have those kind of centerpiece events to attract people or whatever else, I mean that's really tough. And look, I think the conversation kind of comes all the way back to the 50,000 foot view. Is what are we actually doing to encourage people to join the sport and get involved and go racing and all sorts of different classes. I mean, people always talk about combining classes and this and that like it's some sort of fantasy football game, but at the end of the day, most people have kind of probably somewhere between $100,000 and $500,000 worth of their own money sort of invested in these categories. And, to just sort of tell them tomorrow that, well, actually, sorry, you don't have a thing to race anymore. I just think that's incredibly tough. So, for me, it goes back to, well, how do we make the categories more appealing to people to get into, whether that's rule sets or alignment with, categories overseas, or I don't know, there could be any sorts of other different levers that we could pull. I just feel like this one feels like a bit of a trapdoor where it's like, oh, well, sorry, actually, you don't meet the numbers. We haven't really done anything to help you. Yeah, you lose your championships now. That's what it feels like to me.
I think you've nailed it there. It's like you haven't done anything to I don't know, let's look at street stocks. You might say, oh, there's a demise in street stocks, possibly because stock cars and super stocks have become more attractive and maybe people can fall into those ones there. But then you look at street stocks, and this is not a thing on streeties, I'm just using them as an example. But those guys there, they go, oh, you're going down. And then SNZ says, no, you can off you go. You haven't reached the threshold. So what have they done to assist the threshold there? Their members paying a certain amount to their Speedway New Zealand license, there should be a degree of, okay, let's work it out, or even come back to them and say, and that's for any struggling class, hey, class, we've noticed that you're struggling. What can we do to help you? What benchmarks can we create to, you've got to get to this benchmark, because creating a benchmark and making sure that you hit that level will create certainty for your sponsors, for the promoters that wish to contract you as a class. So go, okay, you're here at the moment. This is what we need to do to bring it might only be something small, Okay, we've got to assist a specific thing by 10%, but that's going to make sure that you hit that benchmark. I think it's up to potentially up to SNZ as a body to ensure that they are assisting or actually acknowledging the decline possibly of specific classes, and then going to those people and saying to those classes and going to the heads and the big dogs inside them, this is where we see you, and what are we going to do to ensure that you don't spiral?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the actual issue here is a lack of competitors. I mean, that's ultimately, if you zoom all the way out, that's what we're talking about, is a class has less than 50 competitors, so we've just deemed that as bad, basically. We've deemed that as something that people could improve on. But, I mean, I'm always...
what fixes everything, though, eh? Ghost licenses. Ghost licenses.
Okay, wait, before we get to ghost licenses, before we get to that, I think like the same way to fix this same problem is, well, instead of taking away your championship, after 3 years or 4 years, whatever you want, you're still not over that 50 competitor mark. well, let's put a plan in place, or a strategic plan, or let's make some rules, or let's look at the relevancy of the class, or let's do something, rather than just pulling that drawbridge up. I mean, those are the different solutions to the same problem, which is that we have fewer than 50 competitors. We've deemed that as something to improve on. The way to do it would be for me to look at the class and how do we promote it, and how do we sort of change the rule set or relevancy to make it interesting for people to get involved. Because let's say you were coming out of mini stocks and you were looking at a grade, and then you suddenly heard, oh, well, actually in 3 years' time, they might not have a New Zealand title. Well, the last thing you're going to do is invest, potentially $100K in a car and go and race in that category if at the end of it you can't race for a New Zealand title. So I think there's a couple of other points that it could create, which is, you just mentioned it before, but I mean, let's say your class is at sort of 49 and it's year 3, and everyone's just getting together to raise the $370 to basically buy a couple of licenses and get it above 50 so that you keep your class, right? That's what I would do. And you know what? Other people would probably do it too. So, I mean, that's sort of loophole number one. And
well, if I could keep everything on remit number 1, I would get a license for everything just so I could have that voting power in case they didn't get it right.
yeah. Well, exactly. And I think, the other discussion it probably even makes me think of is, well, why do we even have regional and national class designations? I mean, literally, what is the point of it? Because, I mean, okay, again, back to the point of it, it's to have, whether you have a New Zealand or a Grand Prix or an Islands title, but maybe we just don't really need that designation, and maybe we just all, I mean, if your class has enough competitors and someone wants to organise it and Speedway New Zealand will ratify it, I mean, maybe just it's sort of a free market approach, but maybe that's the best way of doing it, is you actually don't need the designations. And, if a class gets together and decides, well, let's have a New Zealand sprint car title, well, let's do it. But I guess, that was sort of the other thought exercise it raised for me was, well, actually, why do we have these designations? And then the other thought process that sort of brought up for me was actually, again, we've been having this discussion. I actually wrote an article on it in about 2006 in the Dirt Track magazine, and it was called Christian Soapbox, and Tim Saville made me do it. But it was basically along the lines of, well, as a youth competitor, I mean, I want to have a New Zealand title. We're doing more than just learning in these grades. Basically, let us have a New Zealand title because we meet all the criteria. So you've already got a situation where you've got these designations, but you're sort of deciding, well, actually, nah, these people over here meet it, but nah, we're not really letting them. So, yeah, I mean, maybe, hot take alert, but maybe just get rid of the designations and it just sort of fixes itself. And then the classes that have fewer than 50 competitors, we just say, well, how do we make those grades more relevant, and how do we get some people to go into them from mini stocks or quarter midgets or whatever the case may be?
Mini stocks to get a 1NZ, mini stocks to get a national championship. It'd have to be done over 5 weekends, and there's 14,000 competitors. But let's do it.
I'm showing my age here, but it already happens. It's called Mini Stocks in Paradise, and I argued about this in 2006. Is that it already happens? Like, if you don't think that people see Mini Stocks in Paradise as the New Zealand Youth Mini Stock Championship, like, I don't know, I can't help you, but that's the case. And then you could argue that, the championships like the Manawatu Championship. I mean, we used to race against like 50 cars at a Manawatu Championship or Mini Stocks in Paradise before they split them into junior and senior. I mean, you used to have to place in the top 3 on the first night in your group to qualify for the second night. So you had to podium at a championship just to make the top 26. And then you had to, race the best of the best to then go and podium at a championship again. So you could actually argue it's the most competitive New Zealand title in Speedway in New Zealand. So why isn't it the New Zealand Championship?
Where did you finish in Mini Stocks in Paradise?
Well, I was an admirable second.
Who won?
In my last year, Jason Long won, actually.
I've heard of him.
Jason Long won, yeah. So, but I mean, that's the breeding ground of people like myself, Jason, Jamie Lass. I mean, all those names. Jordan Deere, you name it. But for me, just that should be a New Zealand title. And for me, it's a bit of a travesty.
So my one is, if the issue is declining numbers, how the fuck is stripping a national status going to increase numbers? So
yeah, we're both against this. Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly just there. And then I've added in some other bits and pieces.
And just for those watching, that are holding on to everything we're saying, I did come to Christian and I said, look, whatever you choose, bro, I've got everything ready. If you wanted to go back and forth and have a fight, I was ready for it. But then I was like, okay, you just choose, bro.
No, but we're both pretty sensible people, so I think we're just giving the common sense approach here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to offer options in the other area too. Yeah. I'm just also happy to go through and contradict myself and give reasons why I'm wrong.
We're against remit too. No, I think that's fair. Okay. And then I think the discussion that I hope people have in the room is around those other little things that I've just thrown out there, hopefully into someone smart's brain around. Well, actually, do you know what? The other thing too about just quickly on youth classes and New Zealand titles, they have a New Zealand title in karting for, Vortex Mini Rock, Junior Max, Junior Rock, all those classes, Cadet, you name it. You're racing for a New Zealand title from the age of 6 all the way through, basically through your adult life. So, I mean, the world hasn't ended in karting. And I mean, in fact, we're producing some of the best young Kiwi drivers in the world. Shane Van Gisbergen, Brendan Hartley, guys like that. I mean, let's have a think about it. That's all I'm saying. I hope someone. Oh yeah, Liam. Yeah, there's all sorts of names. Marcus Armstrong, Scott Dixon. Anyway, that's the thing I hope people talk about. All
right, so room. For remit number 2, are we thumbs up or thumbs down?
We're thumbs down. Yeah, we're thumbs down.
Cool.
Yep. Hope people vote against that. And then also hope people talk about the things that I've given them, the talking points I've given them.
Number 3.
Remit number 3. Remit number 3 talks about under C16, so constitutional, the marketing team. Okay, the marketing team. By the way, we're 2 thumbs up for Remit 3 because it effectively deletes what's called the marketing team. That's a good thing. And they've replaced it with something that's called the Speedway Awards Panel, which is basically something that's appointed by the directors to go away and judge the awards, which the reason 2 reasons I'm in favour of Remit number 3 is Remit number 3 reflects the real world system of how things happen right now, as in the board appoint the judges for the awards, and the marketing team, or the promotions team as it's been called in the past, was a wind up of the old SPAN, Speedway Association, Speedway Promoters Association of New Zealand, where it all wrapped up into the promotional or marketing team as they're called now. So this is completely fine, and I've been saying that we need to do this for years. So good on someone for finally taking it out of the Constitution. I've been saying for years that basically what needs to happen is someone needs to be hired in the Speedway New Zealand office, and their job is the marketing and promotions manager. They sit inside the office, and their job description is bring in a stream of revenue that's basically sponsorship from companies. Go through proposals. Basically find a sponsor for every class, the organisation as a whole, the scrutineers, the referees. I mean, Specsavers sponsoring the referees, that's something, right? But basically someone whose job it is to sort of execute those partnerships inside the office. So it's their full-time job. And then basically what happens with the contribution that currently gets made by the promoters to that marketing team or fund, they should keep contributing that amount of money, and basically Speedway New Zealand matches it, and then that's part of the salary, and then the rest of the salary is made up of the sponsorship. So basically, here's a job, now go and pay for yourself.
It works.
Now, is that the most common sense approach that we've ever talked about? I'm not sure, but I mean that was basically my plan a couple of years ago. It's good to see that it's finally happening, but I haven't seen the second half of the plan. I've only seen it coming out of the Constitution. So hopefully both parts of the plan are there too.
And one of the things you've mentioned is award judging. Now, to me, that's like the most important thing when I think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's the most outward-facing thing that Speedway New Zealand do is the awards. Absolutely. So it is really crucial that they get it right and they judge the awards, and that the awards are organised well and all of that sort of thing as well. So it's funny actually because the awards were never really meant to be seen as a money-making venture. It was always supposed to be sort of Speedway's night of nights. And
Yep.
I actually think that I've said it heaps of times, but I'll say it again on my podcast, but the best Speedway awards I've ever been to were that one in Palmerston North, where I think it was Philippa Jones, Bruce Robertson, and Tim Saville and I. To a lesser extent, me, to be fair, I didn't really do much, with mostly Philippa and Bruce, and Tim organised it. But it was just the best. There was all sorts of, basically every single 1NZ car was there because they paid for them to be there. And, there was all sorts of variation. There was also sorts of historic cars. Bruce's tank was there. Original tank was there. It was in this massive, massive auditorium in Palmy, the old Rainbow Centre, or at the arena as most people probably know it as these days. But yeah, fantastic night, great food, great awards, just absolutely nailed it. But it's because the focus was on being, the centerpiece event for Speedway as a whole that people could come to and celebrate sort of the sport as a whole. So we need more of that. So absolutely, remit number 3, we're 2 thumbs up for remit number 3.
Look, I've worked in events for decades, and I do them really, really well. Now, anyone that thinks that I can help them with their event, don't come knocking. I don't want to help. But I've done 3,000 events in the last 10 years. I totally get it. But I also totally understand what you're saying. There is so much more that goes behind the scenes. And there's also a lot that people don't realize. Everything from security to ensuring that, the room's got the right carpet down on the right backdrop in the right room lighting, the right amount of sound for the right amount of people, the type of food that you're going to have. Is it going to be this, that, or the other? Is it going to be a buffet to table? Are we going to go up and dress the tables this way, that way, the other? Are they rounds? Are they squares? Are they for the tables? There's so much. And then what's the entertainment? Who's the MC, and then we've got the awards themselves, and who's going to choose the person. The biggest one for me is ensuring that, there's been many a time where I thought, hey, I might be okay for this award, didn't win it, that's okay. I mean, the judges can get it wrong, they did in my situation. But that's the thing, is that there's so many I'm not saying this happened, but it's like, Steve doesn't need to get it because he's larger than life.
No, it's definitely happened. Yeah, where the wrong person's got the award. I mean, or someone else that should have got it. But yeah, I mean, that's just...
Or even just stupidly worded awards so that it's like, we're going to do this one here. What we mean is this. What we're going to say is this. And then you go up and go, okay, blah, blah, blah. Contribution to Speedway, for example. Oh, no, it's long-term contribution to Speedway, not what you've done this year. So, okay, so I'll revisit in 20 years' time.
Yeah. Innovation of the year is one that I used to die on the hill every year that I was on the board, where there's so much innovative stuff going on in the sport, and it was the award that was always like, oh nah, it should come off, we won't do that one. But yeah, there's so much innovative stuff going on that it just made me sad that basically wasn't always available. But yeah, so I think remit number 3 basically just reflects the reality of the situation now. I mean, some great people have been on that marketing team over the years, and the promotions team, as it's been called before. But the reality is that in this day and age, our sport is a semi-professional sport, and it needs to be marketed in a professional way by someone whose full-time job it is in the office, basically. So that's what I hope happens. Such is the way with these things, with the governing body. We've seen that they're going to take it out of the Constitution. That's good, but haven't seen the second half of the plan, which no doubt will only be produced to the AGM floor and probably to no one else. So
just one more thing on the awards side of things. I've got to share this with you. I once got sort of indicated that there is no possible chance that I could win a specific award that I really, really wanted, possibly because it's me. So I was like, well, how can I fix this? I found out that there was a company that had previously won that award and that they were winding up the company. So I went to the guy and I bought the company. I got the trophy just so I could say, I can now actually legitimately and claim 100% that I've won this particular trophy from Speedway New Zealand that they wouldn't give me because I bought a company that did. True story.
My other thing that touches on that is the awards subjects and what we give them out for and that sort of thing. I think they need to have a serious, good, hard, long look at some of the awards, and right now it sort of relies on someone being nominated. That is a farce in this day and age of the internet. I mean, the awards, the Speedway New Zealand awards are always after sort of most of the track ones. Just take everyone's competitor of the year, put them into a pot, and then that's your voting pool or your nomination pool for that sort of categories, finalists, effectively, and then judge from there. I mean, it's pretty simple. Photographer of the year, I mean, every year they do it on Facebook and it turns into a popularity contest. And, normally it's a crash photo of a stock car that sort of wins. I think it could probably be done a better way. So, yeah, there's all sorts of ones that just sort of probably need to have a good look at. Because actually, I think the reason people get so passionate about the awards is because of how much that actually means to people and how much that recognition of excellence kind of means from the governing body. So it should be judged and organised as such. So 2 thumbs up for Remit 3. Good job. Right. Great work. Remit number 4. Look, I mean, this just sort of reflects probably a bit of a sub. So basically, it's a short, sharp one. Stewards, senior officials and technical stewards currently have 7 days to report a competitor to the board or directors for further penalty. This one just drops the window down from 7 to 2 days. So, yeah, play on. The only thing I'd probably say here is that maybe it should be 2 working days. So that Monday, Tuesday. Because I think sometimes officials are still driving home from the track, sometimes on Sunday, or, we've just asked them to basically work all day Saturday for free as a referee. Maybe they could probably have Sunday off before sending in their report. So, yeah, that'd probably be the only thing I'd say about this one. I think this is a good one. Most people probably agree that 7 days is too long. 2 days is maybe still too long.
Let's have a look at a couple of against. So some incidents require multiple reports.
Well, everyone better get typing fast.
Okay. 2 calendar days could become effectively impossible. So
yes,
I think what you're saying, 2 working.
Yeah, you actually get into a situation where, say, through Christmas and New Year's, where we're basically racing every day. We don't know what day it is. 2 days is probably too long in that situation. Also, the office is closed through that period, which is really tough. But
if it happens on, like, say, Boxing Day, and then Boxing Day happens on a Saturday. So, say you've got Christmas Day on say a Saturday, Boxing Day's on the Sunday. Your Monday and Tuesday would be your stats. So, in theory, you'd have to go Thursday, Friday. It'd have to be by the end of Friday. So, I think that your one of 2 working days is possibly the best option.
Could be, yeah. This one's, it's not so much about the reviews or the board reviews. I think that's actually one that should probably be looked at in future. This one's just about, so let's say an official sees something on Saturday night and then they decide, actually, I'm going to refer that competitor to the board. I gave them, the maximum penalty I could at track, and then I'm going to refer them to the board. You have 7 days to do that at the moment. So this one reduces that down to 2. Which I think is perfectly fair and reasonable. So, yeah.
I agree. It's ridiculous in modern sport to say 7 days. The other thing that you have in our sport is you've got 2 days to get it right. And if you don't get it right, that's on you. So what I'm saying is you go, okay, day 1, day 2, end of day 2, you must have it in. But if you go to day 6 and then you find out, hang on, I wasn't going to do this, but such and such has been in my ear, and now I'm going to... it's almost like putting your money where your mouth is, because it stops you've got to make that decision. You've got to make sure it's right. You get it in. I mean, the evidence should be certainly obvious within 48 hours. And of course, for everything else, social media is going to fill the information vacuum. So,
yeah. And I think that's what sort of happens right now is you could get into a situation where, basically the court of social media happens, and then it's like, actually, I was the official on that night. I am going to send Steve to the board for that because, actually, I did see that on social media. So, not saying that has happened or whatever else, but I mean, you could get into a situation where that happens. So, 2 thumbs up for Remit 4. This one's actually pretty non-controversial. Okay. Good stuff. Remit number 5. Okay, this one is potentially controversial, although the promoters of the series I've spoken to actually, A, didn't even know about it, but B, sort of have come back to me and thought about it. And not.
So what's the remit?
Basically, the remit is any brand new series, championship, cup, or points competition run under Speedway New Zealand Authority now needs Speedway New Zealand approval before it starts. So that covers tracks, promoters, clubs, and third parties. So let's say I organise a series for street stocks. I now need to get that signed off by Speedway New Zealand before that occurs. And then they have to appoint a series coordinator who basically acts as a bit of a liaison between Speedway New Zealand and the series. that person needs a current Speedway New Zealand license and board approval, and then they carry responsibility for compliance, points, records, and reporting. I guess the other thing is that this sort of covers things like prize money. So any entity handling prize money, bonuses, or appearance money has to legally be authorised and tax compliant. So Speedway New Zealand can ask for proof of that before approving a series. So basically, Speedway New Zealand will have to approve all series, championships, cups, or points competitions run under any Speedway New Zealand rules. So any Speedway New Zealand track that's running a series, championship, cup, or points competition. So discuss, because I feel like, okay, first things first is I actually don't think, having some feel for how kind of the room works on the day at an AGM or SGM, my gut feel on this one is that it probably won't pass, but that it will generate some interesting discussion around the place of series and sort of those third-party ones that are kind of, there's no provision at the moment in the rulebook for series, and maybe there does need to be a place for that.
What's a caravan derby or a demo derby? Novelty event?
Novelty event.
Great.
But
so there
actually,
is something there so we just call it a novelty event, and now we can run a series but under a different name?
Yeah, I think, that's probably the first thing to say, is that I think there are definitely ways around it. But I also think that this is unlikely to go through in its current form. I'd be very, very, very surprised if it does. I actually think the intent of it is kind of somewhere. I think there does need to be some safeguards around series in particular. I'm a competitor. I don't really care about the tax implications and things like that. But I think if you're promised X amount of prize money, you should receive X amount of prize money. I think that's kind of a given. But I do think that something like a series director, I also think Speedway New Zealand approving things like season points championships at your local track, or approving things like, I don't know, we want to, like in sprint cars this year, we had the Auto Super Shops trifecta, which was those last 3 meetings at Bay Park, and it was really just about generating some buzz around those last 3 meetings. So it's kind of just a promotional tool and lever and whatever else that promoters pull when they want to do something different. So, and then in the case of the South Island, actually, because series are particularly prevalent in the South Island, and I think the reason for that is because the travel distances are so much bigger and longer. Between Ruapuna and Nelson is 4 hours, and Christchurch to Invercargill is, like 27 hours, and it's just
longer than that.
There's big distances between the tracks, so what they tend to do is have series so that they all stick together and go and race around the place. And I'm not saying this makes it impossible. I'm saying it kind of just makes it harder to do it. And I mean, there's no criteria in there around what makes a good series. I think you absolutely,
there's nothing there's no criteria that says what makes a series. One of the things that you just mentioned is like your points championship. So every single club, Speedway club, they have the stock cars or whatever. This year here at Bay Park, you're sitting there racing away. You were racing for points, and driver 1 came first, second, and third. But based off that's actually would be referred to as a series, or could be considered a series. Therefore, would need to have this many people, or this person here that's going to have their name against it, against every single class that we've got at that track, against every track in the country. But then they say, oh, that's different. Well, what is it different? So now you're creating a grey area.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Bang on the money. And I mean, I think before you vote on anything at the AGM or SGM, I mean, what's the criteria for what defines a series? What's the criteria for, what's going to be approved? Or because none of that's really in here. It's just sort of, we're putting this set of rules in, which is basically that Speedway New Zealand has all this newfound power, which ultimately
so that we can slow down series creation, creates bureaucracy. Every new idea requires approval. Also, there might be an idea that not a single one of us has thought about, and then that idea could just be the biggest moneymaker in the world of Speedway, and we go to this person here, but somebody goes, oh, okay, no, and then does it themselves. So now we're taking away somebody else's, the information that they've got. I mean, I think you're possibly overpowering SNZ, and then you could also be, just belittling or taking away initiatives that other people have got.
Yeah, and I again, to your point, I don't like that we're giving them a blank check on what's good or what's bad. because, I mean, you could get into a situation where, well, we don't like that person that runs that series, so even though the series is really good, tough luck, basically. So I think there's too much grey area on this one. I probably acknowledge that maybe there needs to be some, whether it's, I just think they've sort of gone about it the wrong way, where it's like there's a whole, we don't need another section in the rule book for this. I think maybe you could concede that we need to include series promoters or series organizers in the constitution, so that the constitution applies to them as either a license holder or they become some sort of membership type or whatever you want to call it. So they are covered by, effectively Speedway New Zealand. But, look, I just think that...
Are we sort of going, this has been brought in because of something specific? Like, Speedway's best ideas really sort of start at the Speedway New Zealand board meetings. This comes from the brainchild of other people. But is this because... Is this we want to control what's happening down south in the super saloons, or is this to sit there and stop the SS car series coming back in the North Island, or the War of the Wings, or is this about just making sure that we've got that control?
I mean, possibly that's the case. Yeah. What if the board of the day, when a great, amazing centerpiece event like Teams
Champs, yeah.
What if they'd said no to that back in the day? Oh, no, that's far too dangerous. We can't possibly have that. And I mean, look, we would, that's the possibility. And, what if they'd said 30 years ago when they started War of the Wings, no, you can't do that. It's like, well, why not, basically? But so I can't even, I haven't got enough thumbs down this one enough. But I'll just have to go with two thumbs down. And the other thing,
number
just
5,
quick,
2 thumbs down.
2 thumbs down. The other thing, last point to cover on this one, is that there are currently series like War of the Wings and others that do rounds at Speedway New Zealand tracks and at CTRA tracks. What's wrong with that? That's all good. With me as a competitor, let's do more racing. But you could see a situation where basically, that's not allowed. So that's no good. So 2 thumbs down.
So the only thing, if we looked at the other side of things, is if it becomes a Speedway New Zealand series, and this is... I remember 10 or so years ago, there was an event. It was a super saloon car series, SS car, and they went to multiple different tracks. But one of the tracks that they went to was, as you've just mentioned, a CTRA track. X amount of drivers went to that CTRA track and they raced there. And the promoter at the time, protecting his best interest as a promoter of his track, went to SNZ, said that's not okay. They agreed with the promoter and slapped so I think there's 3, maybe 4 drivers with a lengthy stand down because they went to a CTRA track. I guess the only thing that I could see as a positive of that is if we've got a series that you can go up and put your name to in this situation, that potentially SNZ with their person who oversees everything could say, okay, I'm sorry, promoter, this is an SNZ approved event. But outside of that, I see absolutely nothing that's good about it. So I found my 1, but I'm going to still give it 2 thumbs down.
I mean, yeah, you could, I'm sure that, the argument that they've kind of presented as the argument in favour is that, it's around kind of being the recognised national governing body for Speedway competition, blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, Speedway New Zealand is accountable if things go wrong in the series space. And the way that series have kind of got around this at the moment is, for all intents and purposes, except for the extra promotion and the extra whatever else, it's really just a format change and basically a different name. So otherwise it's a club night, basically.
So I've got one more thing on that one, which is if Speedway New Zealand refuses approval, is there an appeal process? And if the answer is no, you've now immediately exposed a governance concern.
Again, things like that and things like what is a good series, what would be approved, all of those sorts of questions are just questions that aren't answered by the streamer. I'm no doubt they'll be sort of put on the floor on the day, but I'd be very reluctant to vote on something I didn't have the criteria for in my hands before I voted on it. So
but you've been on the board because you're actually quite sensible, whereas we know that there's many, many other people that'll go, what? I'm going A. All right, tick A. So let's stop the silly ones from making silly decisions.
Well, I hope not. Again, I'd be very, very surprised knowing the people in the room if they did vote for this one. I'd be very surprised. That's sort of all the remits for the SGM. I think one sort of 50,000 foot view to make on the SGM is these aren't really things that are special. The first one is definitely special in that they need to change that remit number one before they have the AGM because, yeah, I mean, you actually don't really want every man and their dog rocking up and sort of having voting and speaking rights without it really being, okay, that's actually what we're doing now. So you need to have that there needs to be some intention involved. You can't just have that being sort of as a loophole. So they do need to fix that. So they will do the SGM first to fix that. But my view is that the AGM should be a constitution changing exercise every year. You should have the opportunity to do that. And it should be racing rules every year too. I mean, it's crazy to me that things have happened this season with the new set of rules that happened at last AGM that probably won't be fixed for 2-ish years because you can't fix them this year. So they've made changes last year for last season. Things have happened, there's been anomalies, there's been things that kind of weren't probably fully thought through that have been fixed by either local rules or just carry on. So, but you can't change those this year. So that's a mistake. So if you were going to actually do anything at the SGM, it would be for me put forward that you can change racing and constitution rules any year and that's a process that you go through. It's crazy that we have to wait 2 years. And if you look at this year's AGM, the agenda is actually really light. I mean, there's no election of board members. What else are they sort of going to be up to? And the SGM is going to take the most time and then they'll sort of whip through the rest of the agenda. Otherwise, it's all like financials and numbers of competitors and there'll be a few presentations and stuff like that. So make it so that you can change the racing rules and constitution rules every year. Then you don't have to have an SGM in the years that you want to make changes. Hot take.
All right. Hot take. So we've had 5, we've had thumbs up, we've had a double thumbs down, but there we go. 5 remits, mate. Well done.
Thank you. To my point before as well, then after that, it's going to be the AGM.
Oh, here we go.
I just mentioned there's no election and only one person kind of coming off the board. So Matt Stewart from Dunedin is, going to be the lucky person coming onto the board. That's a good thing. Matt's been around the community for a long time. So I think it's good for people like that to kind of filter into the board and have a look, see how things sort of happen at that level. So that's good. Congratulations, Matt. Again,
are there people not putting their hands up anymore? What's it go?
Again, yeah, my 50,000 sort of foot view is last time we had the election in Palmerston North, I mean, there was about 12 or 15 candidates for 6 spots. This year, there's 6 candidates for 6 spots. I mean, okay, probably the board right now would say, oh, that's because everyone's really happy with us. I think the questions they probably could be asking themselves is, well, where have those people gone? What's happened to them? Why aren't more people interested in going on to the board? And then what's their succession plan? Because if they've got no candidates this time, what happens in 2 more years when they're all either 4 years or 6 years or 8 years kind of into their tenure and they're looking to stand down? You've actually sort of got no one that's the next cabs off the rank. So that's a big flag for me. So I watch with interest what happens there. But yeah, that will certainly be interesting. I mean, the question that kind of comes to my head is, are people disengaged with the organisation, which is why you didn't see too many sort of technical changes either, kind of come through. I remember sitting on the board and there was just pages and pages and pages and pages of ideas for technical submissions. You didn't have that this year. So yeah, those are the questions I hope people are asking themselves, is don't see it as maybe a vote of confidence, maybe see it as what's actually going on here. And then my only other thing is just my other favourite part of the AGM, which I call Bruce Robertson's question time. Where in general business, Bruce always puts about 4 or 5 things on the agenda. They're always very good and sort of sensible, serious things that you should talk about at an AGM. So I'm glad to see that again from Bruce. This year, Bruce, he's been hot on this for a few years, but maybe not many people actually know this. But if you're planning on using the word international or world or
New Zealand,
all sorts of New Zealand, those sorts of ones, you have to pay Speedway New Zealand a fee of $1,000 to use those words in your promotion. Not every time you use the word, but
you apply to be called the International Midget Series, for example, or the...
So here's the biggest one that people don't actually realise until they see everything lit up when we see a little platform and it's got something on there. So the NZ Superstock Teams Champs.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we spell NZ? Is it N and a Z? No, it's ENZED. That's the sponsor, and that's his workaround on having the New Zealand Superstock Teams Champs without having to pay $1,000 for a stupid name. I mean, he's the only person doing it, so...
All props to Bay Park for calling it the Aotearoa F2 Midget Champs, because Aotearoa is not covered by the Speedway New Zealand rulebook. So Bruce is hot on that
this year.
Yeah, although now I've mentioned it, someone will probably put it in. Sorry, Bay Park. And the other thing I thought was really interesting, two things, was around Bruce has put forward a discussion on life members of the organisation. So a life member is just, someone that we acknowledge that they've made a, major contribution to the sport over their lifetime, and we basically reward them with sort of that status of, kind of an elevated status in the organisation of, okay, that's someone we really think is amazing. They've done amazing things. You've got people like Sonia Hickey, David Jones, I can think of Wendy Coots, Bruce Robertson himself, Willie Kay, just people that have, gone above and beyond in their life's contribution to the sport. So we acknowledge them with that tier, basically. Ricky Bolton got it a few years ago as well. So he's a life member of the organisation.
He was president for quite a while.
He was the president for a long time, and we did an episode with him a little while ago. But Bruce has put on the agenda this year around code of conduct and whether there's a process around awarding those life memberships to the organisation, or then if there's a code of conduct for those life members after they're awarded life membership.
So is there a threshold? Is there a code of conduct? I'll ask it. Can a life membership be removed? And, what happens if a life member later acts in contrary to organisation's interests? I mean, I'll ask a question. Do we know?
Well, look, I mean, I don't think the topic's ever come up, and I can't think of any reason why off the top of my head that topic would come up. But anyway, it's on the agenda for the AGM this year. So, boy, that will be an interesting discussion.
Definitely. Talladega Nights, baby.
I wish I was going to be in the room for that discussion. That would certainly be one to listen to. That's for sure.
It's certainly going to have this place spinning around like it's rotating, like the rotation system.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not a backwards discussion.
Let's see what happens.
The other one's Riverside and sort of talking about GPs and rotation systems and stuff like that. But they actually mentioned the GP in their question. They're part of the general business. So that gives me a chance to say something I don't think I've ever said on this podcast, which is my idea for making the GPs great again or relevant again, which I flagged at conference a few years ago, but it's sort of died a death. But so broadly speaking, my idea is that every track has their own GP. So the Grand Prix of Bay Park, the Grand Prix of Paradise Valley, Grand Prix of Riverside, what you name it, every track has a GP now. And then of those tracks you can run. So you can run every year. You run your GP every year. But let's say I'm track Christian. I've got a track now. And let's say I'm based somewhere that doesn't always run Superstocks, and I want my fans to see Superstocks in biggish numbers. So I go and find a sponsor and I put on an event and I tell people I'm going to have 50 Superstocks in my town for the Grand Prix of Christian's track. And then that's kind of my way of basically, maybe trying to get the class going. Or maybe I'm a massive sprint car guy. I went to Eldora last year and I want to run sprint cars for my Grand Prix next year. But basically what I'm saying is that every track has a Grand Prix every year. And then the tracks ultimately decide to run whichever class they want to run their GP that year. So maybe I'm a really strong, whatever track, or I'm an open wheel track that wants to run super saloons. So I run the Grand Prix of Christian's track, but I run it as super saloons and I complement it with sprint cars and midgets and F2s and that sort of thing. Or vice versa, I'm a really strong stock car track and I want to run sprint cars. So I run the X track GP and I have sprint cars that night. So my idea
what you're saying
is
like
that,
if you're like if you Waikaraka Park, you go, okay, we want to have the Waikaraka Park New Zealand Grand Prix of saloon cars. And Bay Park says, we want to have the Bay Park New Zealand Grand Prix of super stocks. Palmy says, we want this one here of sidecars or side chairs. Such and such wants the Grand Prix of solos. So we look at every single class in the country. And if there's however many classes are going to have a Grand Prix, we've got, say, 25, 26, whatever it is, Speedway New Zealand sanctioned clubs, and each of them are going to be able to have a Grand Prix. If four tracks say we want to have the Grand Prix of sprint cars, that's when it's going to come down to a bit of a back scratching effort to see who's going to come away with the win.
Jesus. Yes and no. I think, though, in my sort of idea, because the exclusivity is on just each track kind of having that event, so each track has a Grand Prix. So if 10 tracks want to run a sprint car Grand Prix, fucking oath, play on. Or 10 tracks want to run a saloon car Grand Prix, or tracks want to get together and say one night Nelson might run the Nelson Grand Prix and have saloons, and then the next night they might have the Nelson Grand Prix and it's saloons too. That's sort of my idea of getting tracks to work together, but then also just providing each track with kind of something that they can hold on to and make their own, and basically decide whatever they want, but still give the event that sort of national level of status. A bit like sort of how the Monaco Grand Prix, which was just on the weekend, is contested by Formula One cars, but the New Zealand Grand Prix is also an event that's being contested by Toyota Racing Series, or Formula Ford, or back in the day, Formula 5000, or it's sort of mixed around the different classes. So it's not just about sort of, okay, they're mostly all Formula One races now, but effectively it's different classes, but it's the same event, but it's sort of like our local championship that's given that national tier status that might just get sort of more competitors to come along because it is, or the other thing that sort of makes it exclusive is, well, one track might only run one sprint car Grand Prix at Bay Park, somewhere ever. So of course you want to go and win that one because it might be the only time you ever get to sort of do that. So that's just, look, the idea needs some workshopping. I haven't brought it up for like 2 years, but it was just an idea I had around making it sort of each track's own event rather than just sort of something that we don't really know what it is, but yeah, we sort of get it every couple of years, and yeah, but if you sort of made it your own, that was my thought. So send in your thoughts.
So my only one that I'd be like, maybe there's another one that we can do, but I'm going to then pull the rug out from underneath me just so I can support my brothers. If you get the New Zealands, you have to run the Grand Prix within 2 weeks of your New Zealand Championships to give every single competitor a reason to go down for 2 weeks. There you go. You get the Grand Prix and the New Zealanders.
Let's say Ruapuna is hosting the New Zealand Grand Prix, the New Zealand Sprint Car Championship in 5 weeks' time, and Nelson and Blenheim get together and say, well, let's run our Nelson and Blenheim Grand Prix sprint cars that year. So 3 weeks before the event, you make the ferry crossing, you race in Nelson and Blenheim, and then let's say Woodford Glen, for argument's sake, say, yeah, well, actually, we're going to run our Grand Prix this year as sprint cars because we're not really an open wheel track, but we want to just sort of give them somewhere else to race before then going and running at Ruapuna in, the couple of weeks, or Cromwell, or wherever the case may be. The whole South Island might decide, well, there's 40 sprint cars in the South Island, let's make the most of it and put the event on. But it's that national tier, but it's sort of our event, and we decide how we kind of put it on. So that's my idea.
I agree. Absolutely agree.
You don't have to agree, but it's, I think, the question was sort of around, well, how do we make the Grand Prix relevant, basically, because no one really knows what it is, and it's really just it feels like a bit of a bolt-on at the moment. The islands are the islands, probably the Tier 2 championship, and then Grand Prix always feel like a Tier 3 event because no one really knows what it means. But I think if you sort of made it each individual track, then it might just give it some sort of specialness to it. And yeah, you could probably do some fun stuff around it.
100% support it.
Well, thanks, mate.
Look, when you and I came on and so there'll be a few things that hopefully I've upset a few people with some of the things I've said tonight.
Well, I think
that's always my goal and plan. But I literally was like, I don't know. I'll come up. I mean, originally I'd said I've got everything for or against. I just don't know which way I've got to lean to. So I had everything. So if I offended you, it was unintentional, but I actually meant the other way.
Well, I hope people are thinking more than they're upset by the things we've said, because at the end of the day, this whole thing is just about trying to get people to think in a different way about the same things. So hopefully people are just sort of like, yeah, that's something, or nah, don't really like that, but actually we could do it this way, which is slightly different but the same. So hopefully that's how people are thinking.
Now, the only thing I've been thinking about, this is my second time, I've been blessed with the opportunity to hang out on your show.
Yeah, welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you so much. Can you move the 99 behind you to the left of you, just so that you can have one here and one here, because it's just doing my head in, like having this little thing here.
It does my head in too. Yeah, no, I will make that change for you. Absolutely. I was gifted with this wonderful wing panel from Alistair at Fastmaster Speech Studio for my birthday. And I put it on the wall and I was like, yeah, it's sort of the right place, but no, it's not the right place. The Hurricanes jersey always gets the pride of place, which is fair coming into semi-finals this week. Go the Canes. All right. Well, on that happy note, I wish all the delegates at the AGM and the SGM in a couple of weeks all the best of luck. It's a fun room. It's a fast-paced environment, so you've got to have your listening ears on. Don't drink too much at the bar on the Thursday, the Friday, or we'll have a go on the Saturday night. But yeah, you've got to keep your wits about you on the Friday and the Saturday, particularly during the SGM. So good luck. And if you need any advice, don't ring me, because I'm going to be at Goodwood in the UK. So don't ring me. Yes.
I was going to say almost exactly the opposite. If you are there and you've gone down to the special general meeting, etc., I hope it's boring. I hope it's drawn out. I hope you fall asleep, and I hope you do make bad decisions, because there shouldn't be any reason why we should agree on everything, Christian.
That's true. Okay. All right, Steve, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Speedway Insider podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you drop us a comment or a message about this episode. Follow us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest episodes straight to your feed. Thanks again for listening.